Welcome back to ABC General Hospital Spoilers Channel. Today, we will learn about the shocking revelation that has Anna Devane completely shaken to her core and what it might mean for the future of Port Charles. The latest developments in this twisted storyline have fans buzzing with theories about one of daytime television's most notorious villains potentially making an unprecedented return from beyond the grave, the mysterious book delivery. During what should have been just another grim evening in her captivity, Anna Devane received an unexpected companion along with her dungeon dinner, a copy of The Crystalline Conspiracy authored by the enigmatic P.K. Sinclair. This wasn't just any random piece of literature meant to pass the time during her imprisonment. The moment Anna's eyes fell upon the book, her reaction was nothing short of visceral terror. Without hesitation, she hurled the tome across the cold dungeon room, as if it were contaminated with something far more dangerous than mere words on pages. What could provoke such an intense response from a seasoned WSB agent who has faced countless life-threatening situations throughout her storied career? The answer lies in the book's true authorship. P.K. Sinclair is merely a pseudonym, a carefully constructed alias concealing the real writer's identity. The actual author is none other than the diabolical Nathan-Faison, one of Port Charles' most dangerous and calculating criminals who terrorized the town for decades before his supposed demise. The chilling inscription. The horror deepened when Anna noticed something even more disturbing than the book itself. Inside the front cover, someone had penned a handwritten inscription dedicated to a mysterious muse and signed simply with the letter C. This personal touch transformed the book from a mere object into a direct message, a taunting reminder of past connections and dangerous obsessions that Anna had hoped were buried forever along with Faison's body. The intimate nature of this inscription suggests that whoever orchestrated Anna's kidnapping and subsequent imprisonment has intimate knowledge of her complicated history with Faison. This isn't the work of some random criminal organization. This is personal, methodical, and designed to psychologically torment Anna by forcing her to confront ghosts she believed were finally laid to rest. The signature C could stand for Caesar, making this message a twisted love letter from beyond the grave. Or perhaps something even more sinister, a confirmation that Faison's influence continues to poison Port Charles even after his physical death. Jack Brennan's ominous warning. The plot thickens considerably when we examine Jack Brennan's recent threatening conversation with Lulu Spencer. In a scene heavy with implications, Brennan made pointed references to Nathan West being Caesar Faison's biological son. This revelation, while known to longtime viewers, takes on new significance when delivered as a veiled threat. Brennan's timing couldn't be more suspicious, occurring in the same episode as Anna's disturbing book delivery, suggesting these events are interconnected pieces of a larger, more sinister puzzle. Brennan's mention of Nathan's lineage also served as a grim reminder of Faison's other son, the late Peter August, who himself became one of Port Charles' most destructive terrorists before his own demise. Peter's reign of terror demonstrated that Faison's evil could be passed down through bloodlines, creating a legacy of destruction that outlived the man himself. By invoking both Nathan and Peter in the same breath, Brennan seemed to be drawing parallels that should concern everyone in Port Charles, especially those closest to Nathan. The laboratory discovery. Adding another disturbing layer to this unfolding mystery, viewers were treated to a brief but significant glimpse of a computer screen in the late Professor Dalton's laboratory. Displayed prominently on the monitor was a detailed image of a human brain, accompanied by complex data and readings that appeared to be some form of neurological mapping or consciousness monitoring. This wasn't just decorative set dressing, this was a critical clue deliberately placed for attentive viewers to discover. Professor Dalton's research, now revealed to be far more extensive and ethically questionable than previously understood, appears to have been focused on preserving or transferring human consciousness. The brain image suggests experiments that venture into territory that blurs the line between cutting-edge neuroscience and science fiction horror. When combined with the other mysterious elements emerging in Port Charles, This laboratory discovery points toward a technological explanation for what might otherwise seem like supernatural phenomena. The Nathan-Faison theory. All these disparate threads the book. The inscription, Brennan's warnings. The brain imagery are weaving together into a terrifying tapestry that gives credence to rumors that have been circulating among the General Hospital fan community. The speculation that Nathan-Faison has somehow achieved a form of sentience beyond death is becoming increasingly difficult to dismiss as mere fantasy. Could Port Charles' most evil mastermind somehow be orchestrating events from what can only be described as an eerily suspended netherworld? The concept of Faison existing in some liminal state between life and death, consciousness and oblivion, fits perfectly with General Hospital's long history of pushing narrative boundaries. This wouldn't be the first time the show has explored themes of suspended animation, transferred consciousness, or technological resurrection. The pieces are aligning in a way that suggests Faison's influence may not be metaphorical or inspirational. It could be disturbingly literal and active. Nathan's unexplained return. Perhaps the most glaring piece of this puzzle is Nathan West's miraculous return from the dead after 7 long years. His sudden reappearance was never adequately explained, leaving viewers and characters alike with more questions than answers. Initially, many assumed this was simply a case of rushed or incomplete storytelling, a plot hole that would eventually be addressed and sealed. However, as the narrative continues to unfold, it's becoming increasingly apparent that Nathan's unexplained resurrection was intentional, a deliberate mystery meant to unsettle and intrigue. What's particularly curious is Nathan's own complete lack of interest in understanding what happened to him during those missing 7 years. For someone who supposedly just regained consciousness after such an extended period, his disinterest in his own lost time is profoundly unnatural. Most people would be desperately seeking answers, demanding to know where they were, who had them, and what was done to them. Nathan's passive acceptance of this massive gap in his life suggests either severe psychological trauma, deliberate suppression of memories, or something far more sinister, that the consciousness currently inhabiting Nathan's body isn't entirely his own. The Nathan-Faison connection. Jack Brennan's pointed visit to Lulu's home, where he specifically highlighted the bizarre circumstances surrounding Nathan's miraculous return, seems designed to plant seeds of doubt about Nathan's true nature. The dark implication being carefully constructed by the show is that Faison's consciousness, his memories, his personality, his very essence might now reside within Nathan's body, either controlling it entirely or lying dormant like a sleeper agent waiting for activation. This theory would explain numerous anomalies. It would account for Nathan's unexplained absence and sudden return. It would justify the lack of curiosity about his missing years if Faison is controlling Nathan's consciousness. He would certainly not want to draw attention to the procedures that made this possession possible. It would also explain why these revelations are surfacing now, connected to Anna's imprisonment and the mysterious book delivery. Historical precedent in Port Charles. General Hospital has never shied away from incorporating science fiction and supernatural elements into its storytelling fabric. Longtime viewers remember Casey the Alien, a character who arrived in Port Charles from another world and somehow integrated into the community's already chaotic dynamics. The show has also extensively utilized memory mapping technology throughout various storylines, establishing precedent for consciousness manipulation and identity alteration within this fictional universe. These previous narrative excursions into speculative fiction territory mean that a plot involving consciousness transfer or digital sentience wouldn't be unprecedented for General Hospital. In fact, it would be continuing a proud tradition of bold, imaginative storytelling that distinguishes soap opera narratives from more conventional dramatic programming. The show's writers have demonstrated time and again that they're willing to take creative risks that other shows might avoid. Nathan's awareness and complicity. If we accept the premise that Faison's consciousness exists within Nathan, either wholly or partially, the next critical question becomes one of awareness and complicity. Is Nathan completely unaware that he's become a vessel for his biological father's evil consciousness? Could he be an innocent mental hostage, trapped within his own mind while Faison operates his body like a puppet, advancing some long-planned agenda? Alternatively, Nathan might be what espionage agencies call a sleeper agent, someone programmed to appear normal until triggered by specific circumstances or commands. In this scenario, Nathan genuinely believes he's himself and has no conscious awareness of Faison's presence. However, when certain conditions are met or specific trigger phrases are spoken, Faison's consciousness could emerge and take control, using Nathan's body to execute the final phase of some elaborate revenge scheme. There's also a third, even more disturbing possibility that Nathan is partially aware and is engaged in some internal struggle with Faison for control of his own mind and body. This would create tremendous internal conflict and could explain any odd behaviors or personality inconsistencies that characters around him might begin noticing. Faison's final project. Throughout recent episodes, there have been numerous cryptic references to something called Faison's final project. These mentions have been frustratingly vague, offering no concrete details about what this project entails or what its ultimate goals might be. Given Faison's history of elaborate revenge schemes and his obsession with certain Port Charles residents, particularly Anna Devane, it's safe to assume this final project involves something catastrophically destructive. If Nathan is indeed serving as a conduit for Faison's consciousness or plans, then his return to Port Charles after 7 years might represent the activation phase of this final project. Whatever Faison intended to accomplish, he may have spent years or even decades planning it, setting pieces into motion that are only now converging towards some terrible culmination. Nathan's strategic positioning within Port Charles society, his relationships with key figures, and his access to sensitive information could all be components of Faison's grand design. The stakes for Port Charles. The implications of this unfolding mystery extend far beyond Anna's current predicament or Nathan's uncertain status. If Faison has indeed discovered a method to achieve some form of immortality through consciousness transfer or digital preservation, it represents an existential threat to everyone in Port Charles. A villain who cannot truly die, who can potentially inhabit different bodies or exist in computer systems, would be virtually impossible to stop permanently. Moreover, if the technology exists to preserve or transfer Faison's consciousness, it could theoretically be applied to others. This opens up terrifying possibilities for other deceased villains potentially returning, or for living criminals to achieve their own form of immortality. The ethical and practical ramifications of such technology falling into the wrong hands or even the right hands are staggering. What lies ahead? As this storyline continues to develop, viewers can expect tensions to escalate dramatically. Anna's captors clearly have an agenda that involves tormenting her with reminders of Faison, suggesting that whatever is happening, she's somehow central to the plan. Whether she's meant to be a victim, a witness, or perhaps even an unwilling participant remains to be seen. Nathan's role in upcoming events will undoubtedly be crucial. If he is harboring Faison's consciousness, the moment of revelation will be devastating for everyone who loves him, particularly Lulu. The emotional impact of discovering that her brother isn't truly himself anymore, that he might be controlled by or merged with one of Port Charles' greatest villains, could destroy her. Jack Brennan's involvement also suggests that some official government or intelligence agency is aware of these developments, adding another layer of complexity to an already intricate situation. His knowledge and his willingness to use that knowledge as leverage indicate that the conspiracy extends beyond Port Charles borders into national or even international territory. This is classic General Hospital storytelling at its finest, taking a potentially outlandish premise and grounding it in character-driven drama, exploring the emotional and psychological impacts alongside the spectacular plot developments. Faison was one of daytime television's most memorable villains, a true evil genius whose schemes were as intelligent as they were destructive. His potential return, even in this unconventional form, promises to deliver the kind of suspenseful, boundary-pushing storytelling that has kept General Hospital relevant and engaging for decades. Tell us what you make of this developing plot. General Hospital fans, do you believe Faison has somehow achieved consciousness beyond death? Is Nathan an innocent victim or a willing participant in his father's schemes? Next, we will learn about the issue of Jason Morgan and Carly's crumbling friendship that has left longtime viewers scratching their heads in confusion and disappointment. For over 2 decades, General Hospital fans have watched Jason Morgan and Carly navigate life's most treacherous waters side by side, their bond seemingly unbreakable through countless storms. They've weathered mob wars, family tragedies, romantic entanglements, and near-death experiences together, always emerging stronger on the other side. Their friendship has been the bedrock of Port Charles relationships, a constant in a world of chaos and uncertainty. However, recent months have painted a dramatically different picture, one that feels almost unrecognizable to devoted viewers who have invested years watching these two characters support each other through thick and thin. The distance between them has grown into a chasm so wide that it's becoming increasingly difficult to believe they were ever the inseparable duo we once knew. The fracture in their relationship began earlier this year when Jason took it upon himself to warn Carly about the dangers of getting involved with Jack Brennan. His concerns weren't baseless paranoia or jealous interference. They stemmed from genuine knowledge about Jack's true nature and the shadowy world he operates within. Jason, with his extensive experience in dangerous circles and his protective instincts toward those he loves, could see red flags that Carly was either blind to or chose to ignore. He delivered his warnings with characteristic bluntness, perhaps more forcefully than Carly appreciated at the time. She bristled at what she perceived as overstepping boundaries, viewing his cautions as an attempt to control her personal life rather than protect it. The tension between them escalated as Carly dug in her heels, determined to make her own choices regardless of Jason's misgivings about the man she was dating. But the landscape shifted dramatically when Jason revealed the devastating truth about Jack Brennan's manipulations. For the past 2 months, Carly has been forced to swallow her pride and admit that Jason's warnings were not only justified, but didn't go far enough in exposing the depths of Jack's deception. The revelation that Jack deliberately used her as a pawn to ensnare her beloved daughter Jocelyn into the dangerous world of the WSB has been nothing short of devastating for Carly. Every moment she spent with Jack now feels tainted. Every smile and tender word a calculated move in his larger game of manipulation. The knowledge that she unwittingly facilitated her daughter's entanglement with a clandestine intelligence organization, possibly putting Jocelyn in harm's way under circumstances that remain murky and concerning, has shaken Carly to her core. This isn't just about a failed romance or poor judgment in partners. It strikes at the heart of her identity as a mother and protector of her children. The most baffling aspect of this entire situation is Jason's conspicuous absence during what should be Carly's darkest hour. Instead of standing by her side as she grapples with the fallout of Jack's betrayal, Jason appears to have vanished from her life entirely. Viewers have watched in bewilderment as Jason spends his time huddled over strategy sessions with Valentine Casadini in various Port Charles kitchens, plotting schemes that seem entirely disconnected from Carly's crisis. The disconnect is jarring and feels completely out of character for a man who has spent decades being Carly's first line of defense against the world's cruelty. Where is the Jason who would move heaven and earth to ensure Carly's safety? Where is the best friend who would anticipate her emotional turmoil and position himself to catch her when she inevitably falls? His absence screams louder than any words could, leaving fans wondering if something fundamental has shifted in their dynamic that we haven't been privy to on screen. The timeline of events makes Jason's behavior even more perplexing and difficult to rationalize. He dropped the bombshell about Jack's treachery back in mid-October, revealing information that would naturally send Carly into a tailspin of rage, guilt, and determination to protect her daughter at any cost. Yet immediately after delivering this life-altering news, Jason seemingly ghosted his supposed best friend completely. The holiday season came and went without a single scene showing them connecting. sharing their concerns about Jocelyn, or even exchanging basic pleasantries over a cup of coffee. Thanksgiving and Christmas, traditionally times when Port Charles families come together and when Jason and Carly would typically check in with each other, passed without any acknowledgement of their friendship. There have been no follow-up conversations about strategies to extract Jocelyn from the WSB's clutches or discussions about how to neutralize the threat Jack poses to the people they both love. This radio silence is unprecedented in the history of their relationship and leaves viewers feeling disconnected from what should be a central emotional storyline. Instead of collaborating with Jason, Carly has forged an unlikely and potentially disastrous alliance with Valentine Casadini. The two have been meeting in secret, heads bent together over elaborate plans to bring down Jack Brennan and make him pay for his manipulations. While the desire for revenge is certainly understandable given the circumstances, the execution of this partnership raises serious red flags that Jason would normally be the first to identify and address. Valentine, despite his occasional moments of redemption, remains a morally ambiguous figure with his own agenda and a history of using people for his own ends. Carly's decision to trust him and involve herself in what are likely illegal and dangerous schemes is exactly the kind of reckless behavior that Jason would typically intervene to prevent. Yet he remains conspicuously absent from the equation, allowing Carly to potentially dig herself into a hole that may prove impossible to climb out of without serious consequences. In any normal scenario, where Jason Morgan considers someone his best friend and genuinely cares about their well-being, his reaction to Carly's situation would look completely different. Jason, who has spent decades studying Carly's patterns and predicting her emotional responses, knows exactly how she operates under stress. He would anticipate her need for revenge, her tendency to act first and think later when someone she loves has been hurt. He would understand that learning about Jack's betrayal would send her into a dangerous spiral of plotting and scheming. This knowledge would typically trigger his protective instincts into overdrive, causing him to shadow Carly's movements, monitor her associations, and position himself to intervene before she crosses a line that can't be uncrossed. He would be asking pointed questions, demanding to know her plans, and insisting on being involved to minimize the potential damage. The fact that none of this is happening suggests either a fundamental break in their friendship or a serious case of character assassination by the show's writing team. The question that should be at the forefront of Jason's mind is why Carly continues to maintain her relationship with Jack Brennan despite knowing the truth about his manipulation. Any rational person, especially someone as proud and protective as Carly, would have kicked Jack to the curb immediately upon learning how he used her to get to Jocelyn. The fact that she's still seeing him publicly, still allowing him into her life and business, should be sending up massive red flags for Jason. He knows Carly well enough to understand that she wouldn't forgive this kind of betrayal easily, if at all. This means she's playing a long game, likely one that involves keeping Jack close while she plots his downfall. Jason should be all over the situation, demanding to know every detail of her plan and ensuring she doesn't get herself hurt or arrested in the process. His failure to even question what she's doing represents a stunning departure from their established dynamic and leaves viewers frustrated with the inconsistency. Earlier in the year, Jason and Carly reached what seemed like a mature agreement about boundaries in their friendship. They decided to stay out of each other's romantic relationships, respecting each other's autonomy to make their own choices even if those choices seemed questionable to the other person. Carly insisted on continuing her relationship with Jack despite the chorus of warnings from Jason, Sonny, and others in her inner circle. Jason, perhaps weary of being the constant voice of caution that Carly refused to heed, agreed to step back and let her make her own mistakes. This arrangement made sense at the time as a way to preserve their friendship while acknowledging they're both adults capable of making independent decisions about their love lives. However, circumstances have changed dramatically since that agreement was made, and one would expect the terms to be renegotiated in light of the new information about Jack's true nature and intentions. The revelation about Jack using Carly to manipulate Jocelyn into the WSB fundamentally changes the equation and should nullify their previous agreement about non-interference. This is no longer just about Carly's romantic choices or Jason disapproving of her boyfriend. It's about her daughter's safety, about Jack being an active threat, not just to Carly's heart, but to her family's well-being. In any other circumstance, this would be grounds for Jason to throw their agreement out the window and involve himself completely in protecting both Carly and Jocelyn from further harm. Yet for reasons that remain frustratingly unclear, Jason appears to be adhering to the letter of their agreement while ignoring its spirit entirely. Perhaps he's concerned that breaking his word would give Carly license to interfere in his own romantic life, particularly if rumors about his renewed interest in Britt Westburn hold any truth. Maybe he's trying to maintain a sense of boundaries and respect for Carly's independence, even as she spirals toward disaster. The possibility that Jason is keeping his distance because of his own romantic entanglements adds another layer of complexity to this already convoluted situation. If Jason is indeed rekindling his relationship with Britt Westburn or pursuing a new romantic connection, he might be hesitant to get too involved in Carly's drama for fear that she'll retaliate by meddling in his love life. Their past is littered with instances where Carly's interference, however well-intentioned, complicated Jason's relationships and made his life more difficult. He might be calculating that staying out of her business with Jack is the price he needs to pay to ensure she stays out of his business with Britt or whoever else might capture his interest. But if that's truly his reasoning, it represents a troubling shift in priorities. Is maintaining the boundary around his love life really worth the risk of leaving Carly exposed and vulnerable to a dangerous man like Jack Brennan? Would he really sacrifice her safety and potentially Jocelyn's well-being just to avoid having Carly comment on his dating choices? The contrast between Jason's current absence and his historical behavior toward Carly is striking and impossible to ignore for longtime viewers. Throughout their two-decade friendship, Jason has repeatedly demonstrated a willingness to drop everything and come running when Carly needed him. He's faced down mob bosses, taken bullets meant for her, covered up crimes, and restructured his entire life around keeping her safe and happy. When Carly has gotten herself into trouble through impulsive decisions or emotional reactions, Jason has always been there to help her navigate the consequences and find a way forward. He's the one person she's always been able to count on, no matter how badly she's screwed up or how dangerous the situation has become. For him to suddenly adopt this hands-off approach now, when she's dealing with a threat that directly involves her daughter and stems from a betrayal that cuts to her very soul, feels like a betrayal in itself. What makes this storyline particularly frustrating for viewers is that it violates the core understanding of who these characters are and how they relate to each other. Jason and Carly's friendship has been defined by their willingness to go to any lengths for each other, to step in even when not asked, to be overprotective to the point of being overbearing, because that's how they show love and loyalty. The idea that Jason would drop a bomb about Jack's manipulation and then just walk away, trusting Carly to handle it on her own, contradicts everything we know about his character. Similarly, Carly not reaching out to Jason for support, or at least keeping him informed of her plans with Valentine, seems equally out of character. These two have always operated as a team when facing external threats, combining Carly's passion and determination with Jason's strategic thinking and ability to anticipate consequences. Their current separation feels artificial and forced, serving some narrative purpose that hasn't been made clear to the audience, but certainly isn't serving the characters or their established relationship. The situation has reached a point where it's growing stale and repetitive for viewers who keep waiting for the inevitable reunion and reconciliation that never seems to come. Every week, fans tune in expecting to finally see Jason and Carly have the conversation they desperately need to have about Jack, about Jocelyn, about Carly's dangerous alliance with Valentine, and about how they can work together to fix this mess. Instead, they're subjected to scenes of Jason and Valentine plotting mysterious schemes while Carly separately plots her revenge, and never the twain shall meet. The parallel storylines that should be converging remain frustratingly separate, leaving viewers to wonder if the writers have forgotten about one of the show's most important and beloved friendships, or if they're building towards some dramatic reveal that will make all of this distance and disconnect make sense in retrospect. Until that moment arrives, if it ever does, fans are left lamenting the loss of the Jason and Carly dynamic that made General Hospital so compelling for so many years.